Bullies love an easy target, until the quiet kid moves like a fighter they never saw coming. The first thing people noticed about Jalen wasn't his height, his build, or even his face. It was the way he carried himself. Shoulders squared but relaxed, eyes steady, movements smooth, like he was always in control, even when he wasn't trying to be. But in Lincoln High, a mostly suburban school in Naperville, Illinois, being different meant being a target. And Jalen? He was different in every way that mattered. He wasn't loud or flashy. He didn't show up wearing the latest sneakers or designer hoodies like the other guys. Just plain tees, well-worn jeans, and sneakers that had seen a few too many miles. He didn't talk much, didn't force his way into conversations, didn't try to impress anyone. And that made them uncomfortable. Chase Reynolds, the school's star quarterback, was the kind of guy who could smell weakness from a mile away, or at least he thought he could. Jalen's quietness? To Chase, that wasn't confidence. That was submission, an easy target. He must be scared, Chase muttered to his friends as they sat in the cafeteria, watching Jalen eat alone. Probably never seen a school like this before. Beside him, Logan, Chase's right-hand man, smirked. Bet his mom moved him here for a better life or whatever. Poor guy doesn't even know what's coming. A few laughs rippled through the group. It was always the same pattern. A new kid showed up and Chase made it his personal mission to remind them who ran things at Lincoln High. But Jalen? He wasn't new to this. He'd moved around before. Different cities, different schools, different faces, but always the same reaction. He had learned a long time ago that speaking up wasn't always the answer. Sometimes, silence said more than words ever could. Still, the whispers followed him in the hallways. Why does he always sit alone? He never even talks. Does he even have friends? He could feel the eyes on him, the judgment, the quiet ridicule. He had dealt with it before, and he could deal with it again. But this time, something felt different. It wasn't just whispers anymore. It was stares, smirks, shoves in the hallway that were just hard enough to send a message, but not enough to get them in trouble. Chase and his crew had picked their next victim, but they had no idea what they were stepping into. At first, Jalen ignored them. He had learned a long time ago that guys like Chase thrived on reactions. Give them nothing, and they'd eventually get bored. At least, that's what usually happened. But Lincoln High was different. It started with the little things. A bump in the hallway that almost knocked his books out of his hands. A sarcastic, "my bad," followed by laughter. Someone accidentally knocking over his water bottle in the cafeteria. Jalen let it slide, every time. But Chase wasn't looking for a fight. He was looking for an audience. And by the second week, he had one. It was gym class when things really started to change. The coach split them into teams for basketball, and by some unlucky draw, Jalen ended up on Chase's squad. "Great," Chase muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We got the mute kid. That's an automatic L." A few guys laughed. Jalen just took his place on the court. At first, Chase passed him the ball just to mess with him. Quick, sharp passes at awkward angles, trying to catch him off guard, trying to make him fumble. Jalen caught every single one. No hesitation, no struggle. Chase's expression shifted. "Pass it back," he ordered. Jalen did, clean, controlled, straight to Chase's hands. That should have been the end of it. But Chase was the kind of guy who didn't like being wrong, and the fact that Jalen wasn't crumbling like he expected only made him push harder. Next play, Chase drove to the hoop, and Jalen was in the way. He could have moved. Should have moved. Instead, he stood firm. Chase ran straight into him, hard. Expected him to stumble, maybe even fall. But Jalen barely budged. That's when Chase's frustration turned into something worse. He shoved Jalen, harder this time. "You trying to start something?" Jalen stared at him. Calm, unshaken. And that silence. That unbothered, unwavering silence. That's what made Chase snap. He needed to break him. The final straw came a few days later. Lunch. Same table, same crowd, same routine. Jalen was eating alone like always when Chase strolled over and grabbed his backpack off the floor. "Hey," Chase smirked, holding it up. "Bet you got something real important in here, huh?" Jalen slowly looked up. Chase unzipped the bag and dumped everything onto the floor. Books, notebooks, pens, spilling across the cafeteria tile. The room went quiet. And then Logan noticed something. A pair of worn-out boxing gloves at the bottom of the pile. "No way," Logan laughed, picking them up. "You box?" Chase grabbed the gloves, turning them over in his hands. "Oh, I get it. That's why you're always so quiet. You think you're some kind of tough guy, huh?" Jalen didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. And for the first time, Chase felt something he didn't like. Doubt. But he wasn't backing down now. He had already made this a show, and he needed to finish it. "You know what?" he said, tossing the gloves back onto the pile. "Let's see if you can really fight." Jalen didn't react, not right away. He reached down, picking up his things one by one, moving as if Chase and the entire cafeteria weren't watching him. As if he wasn't the center of attention in a game he never agreed to play. That only made Chase bolder. "You scared?" he taunted, stepping closer. "Come on, man. You got the gloves. You train, right? Show me what you got." Jalen kept his head down, slipping his books back into his bag. Chase chuckled. "That's what I thought." The moment he turned his back, Jalen spoke. "You don't want that." It was the first time Chase had heard his voice, and it stopped him mid-step. It wasn't loud, wasn't threatening, just a quiet, certain statement. Chase turned around. "What was that?" Jalen stood up, slinging his bag over his shoulder. "I said, you don't want that." The cafeteria had never been so quiet. Chase's eyes darkened. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone like Jalen. "Oh, I don't?" Chase stepped closer, shoving him again. "What, you gonna do something?" Jalen didn't move. Chase laughed, shaking his head. "Yeah, that's what I thought." And then, for no reason other than to prove a point, he knocked Jalen's tray off the table, sending his food crashing to the ground. That was it. Jalen sighed. The kind of sigh that comes when you've given someone too many chances, when you've tried, really tried, to walk away. He slowly looked up at Chase. "If you really want to do this," he said, "after school." Chase's grin widened. This was exactly what he wanted. A public fight, an easy win, the final humiliation. "You heard him," Chase announced to the cafeteria. "After school, behind the gym." A buzz of excitement filled the room. Everyone knew what was coming, or at least they thought they did. Jalen just picked up his backpack, slung it over his shoulder, and walked out. And for the first time, Chase had a strange feeling. Something about this didn't feel like a win. By the time school let out, the word had spread. A crowd gathered behind the gym, dozens of students forming a loose circle, phones out, whispers flying. Fights didn't happen often at Lincoln High, but when they did, people showed up. Chase was already there, bouncing on his heels, hyping himself up. Logan stood beside him, grinning. "You got this, bro." He's all talk. But Chase wasn't worried. He had size, strength, and confidence. And Jalen? He had none of that. Or so he thought. Jalen arrived 5 minutes later. No entourage, no words, just him, hands in his pockets, walking straight into the circle like this was nothing new. He dropped his bag at the edge of the crowd and pulled out the gloves. Not to wear them, just to place them neatly on top of his things. A quiet statement. Chase cracked his knuckles. "Let's go." Jalen didn't move. "I said let's go." Chase stepped forward, shoving him. Hard. Jalen exhaled slowly. Then, without warning, he moved. Before Chase could react, Jalen shifted to the side, dodging the next shove with a speed that didn't make sense. Chase threw a lazy swing just to scare him, but Jalen leaned back just out of reach, eyes locked on his opponent like he was reading every move before it happened. The crowd gasped. Chase scowled. "Oh, you think you're slick." He swung again, harder this time. A full-force right hook, meant to end it quick. Jalen saw it coming before Chase even committed to the punch. He ducked. Fast. The kind of fast that didn't come from luck. It came from training. His footwork was clean, precise, effortless. He wasn't just avoiding hits. He was making Chase miss. And Chase? He was getting frustrated. Another swing, another miss, then another. Jalen wasn't hitting back. He didn't have to. He was letting Chase beat himself. The crowd started murmuring. Logan's smirk faded. Something wasn't right. Chase, breathing harder now, launched a desperate punch. But this time, Jalen didn't just dodge. He countered. One clean body shot, right to the ribs. It was fast, surgical, not wild or angry, just enough to make Chase feel it. And he felt it. Chase staggered back, stunned. His face twisted in anger, but before he could react, Jalen stepped in and shut him down. A quick combination, nothing flashy, just efficient. A jab to the chin, another to the gut, and a final controlled sweep that took Chase's legs out from under him. He hit the pavement hard. The crowd went silent. Chase rolled onto his side, coughing, eyes wide. He wasn't hurt, just shocked. Completely, utterly shocked. Jalen stood over him, calm, controlled, unshaken. He didn't gloat, didn't smile, just picked up his backpack, slung it over his shoulder, and looked down at Chase. "I told you." Then he walked away. And just like that, everything changed. The fight was over, but the story was just beginning. By the next morning, everyone at Lincoln High had seen the video. Someone had caught the whole thing, Chase swinging wildly, Jalen dodging like it was nothing, and then the moment that really mattered, Chase hitting the ground. It spread like wildfire. Group chats, Instagram, Snapchat, even the teachers knew. And Chase? He wasn't just embarrassed. He was ruined. For years, he had been the untouchable king of Lincoln High. The guy everyone either wanted to be or wanted to impress. But now, they saw him differently. People weren't laughing at Jalen anymore. They were laughing at Chase. Whispers in the hallways, smirks when he walked past. Some kids even reenacted the moment he fell, mocking the same way he used to mock others. He tried to play it off, act like it didn't matter. But it did. Logan was the first to abandon ship. "Look, man," he muttered a few days later, "it's just, a bad look. Translation, you lost. I can't be seen with you anymore." And just like that, Chase started eating lunch alone. But Jalen? His world had shifted in a different direction. People saw him now, not as the quiet new kid, but as something more. He still kept to himself, still didn't talk much, but the respect was there. Not fear, respect. And that was the difference. The same guys who used to mock him now nodded in passing. A few even tried making small talk, cracking jokes, asking questions. Some of it was fake, curiosity, maybe even guilt, but some of it felt real. One afternoon, a kid from his math class approached him. "You ever think about joining the boxing team?" Jalen shrugged. "Not really." The kid grinned. "You should. You're insane, man." Jalen just shook his head. Fighting was never the point. It never was. But it was funny how quickly things could change. Even funnier? How Chase still hadn't learned his lesson. Because instead of accepting defeat, he was already planning something worse. Chase wasn't done. He had lost in front of the whole school, his reputation shattered. But guys like him, they don't just let things go. For the next few days, Jalen could feel it. The stares, the tension. Chase wasn't the type to take a hit and move on. He was waiting. And on Friday, after school, he made his move. Jalen had just stepped out of the building, heading toward the parking lot, when he heard footsteps behind him. Too many. He already knew. He turned around slowly. Chase. Logan. 3 other guys, bigger than Chase, faces full of bad intentions. A setup. Chase smirked. You didn't think that was it, did you? Jalen exhaled. Here we go again. But before anyone could take a step, another voice cut through the air. Yo, Chase! Chase paused, looked back. Half the school was watching. And not just watching, waiting. Some of the same people who had laughed at Jalen before. They weren't laughing now. They were standing there, silent, watching Chase. And that's when it hit him. This wasn't like before. It wasn't just him and Jalen. It was everyone. Because Jalen hadn't just won a fight. He had flipped the whole dynamic. The same people Chase had spent years stepping on. They weren't afraid of him anymore. One guy in the crowd spoke up. You need 5 guys to handle one dude? Man, that's weak. Another laughed. Didn't you get dropped last time? Chase's smirk faded. His face burned. He had already lost. He muttered something under his breath, shoved past Logan, and stormed off. The others followed. Jalen watched them go, then shook his head and turned toward the parking lot. No fight. No words. Just done. That was the last time Chase ever messed with him. Because at the end of the day, Jalen didn't need to prove anything. The real lesson. Strength isn't about how hard you hit. It's about knowing when you don't have to. Not every fight is worth fighting. Sometimes, silence is the strongest move you can make. Respect is earned, not taken. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated? What did you do about it? And if you like this, hit that subscribe button. More stories like this are coming your way.